Wezathale. Today we're back in the Old English Orosius. This passage describes the beginning of Rome. So from Romulus and Remus founding the city to the beginning of the Republic. Romulus and Remus's story is not really kind of explained here. They're mentioned, but the bulk of the content of this reading is going to be kind of the crimes of the early Romans and what conditions came about that the Republic was made. Like normal, I'll read a sentence or two in Old English, and then I'll kind of explain what I just read. Let's get started. Impfeor hunde wintra, und impfeorti, thaste Troja creca burg awasted was, werth Roma burg getimbred from twam je brodrum, Remuse und Romuluse. Okay, so like normal, they're measuring years and winters, and here we have 440 winters after Troy is destroyed. The word is awasted was. Werth Romaburg je timbred, Rome was built, from twam je brodrum, Remuse und Romuluse, from two brothers, Remus and Romulus. Notice here, and throughout this passage, the scribe, or the translator, inflects proper names from Latin, not by using their Latin inflection, but by adding an Old English inflection to the end of the Latin nominative form. So Remus and Romulus are the two nominative forms of these names. And because they're in dative here, again, from twam je brodrum, so it's in the dative, he just adds an E to the end. Okay. Und rathe after Romulus hire onion unje klansode mit his brother sleie, und axithan mit his hiwunge und his jeferna. Welche bisne he thar stellende was, mid tham the hi baron Sabini tha burgware that te hi him uden hiura dochtra him to vivum to habbanne, und hi him thar rabena for weirdon. Okay. Rathe after, you'll notice here the one manuscript has after thon, which is, I think, more common. Thon is the instrumental. Rathe after is, it just kind of means like quickly after that. So right after. Romulus hire onion unje klansode. He tainted, or he kind of perverted his beginning, mid his brother sleie, with the slaying of his brother. Und axithan, and also after that, mid his hiwunge, with his marriage, und his jeferna, and his kind of comrades. Huilche bisna, he thar stellende was, with mid thamthe he baron Sabini tha burgware. So here the name is actually declined in the nominative plural for Latin. But he commanded the Sabines, tha burgware, the people who lived in that city, that te hi him jeuden, that they would allow hiura dochtra him to vivum to habbanne, that they would have their daughters as wives. Und hi him thar rabena for weirdon, and they denied that request. That is, so Romulus asked if the Romans could have the Sabine women as wives, and the Sabines said no. He swathach heura unthonkes mid sweekdome hi beatan, mid thamthe hi baron that he him fylstan mosten, that he hira golum the eid blodhan michten. Tha he him thas yetidedon, tha havdon he him to vivum, und heura faderum eft aivan noldon. Okay. He swathach, so in spite of that, heura unthonkes mid sweekdome hi beatan. So this kind of negation, they are evaded with treachery, with sweekdome. Mid thamthe hi badon, that he him fylstan mosten. So in that, they asked that they could help them, that he hira gorum theid blodhan machten, that they kind of might easier worship their gods. So theid is the easierly kind of. We really don't have an English word for this anymore, but it is the adverb comparative, so just easier. And they're asking for the Sabines to come and help them worship their gods so that it would be easier for them. Basically, just join us in worshiping our gods. And then tha hi him thasitithadon, when the Sabines agreed to that, tha havdon hi him towivum, then they took the women as their wives, on teoraferrum eft ayivan noldon, and they would not give them back to their fathers. Im that war that master yewin moni jaar, oth he fornach mit alle forslijne on forwoordene waren on eidere halve, that he mid nanum thinge ne merkton yesemede werdan, thar romara weef mid heura, and we'll just pause here. So, imthat, like around that, because of that, war that master yewin moni jaar, there was a great war for many years. Oth he fornach mit alle forslijne on forwoordene waren, until they were almost all killed or destroyed, forslijne und forwoordene, on either halve, in either side. That he mit nanum thingene michton yesemere werden, and then maybe we can continue here. The last sentence ended, thar romana weef mid heura, oh, wrong one. Childum irnende waron je mong tham je feuchtum, and heura ferrum waron to fotum fallende, and bidende, that he for thara childa luvan, thas je winnis sumne ende je diden. Okay. So they couldn't make any kind of end to this fight until thara romana weef, the Roman wives, that is, these were the women of Sabine, mid heura childum, with their children, irnende waron, jemong tham je feuchton, were running in between the fighters. Und heuraferrum waron to fotum fallende, and they were falling to the feet of their fathers. Und bidende, that he for thara childa luvan, thas je winnes sumne ende jediden. And they were praying that they would, for the love of their children, make some end to this war. That is, the women realize that their fathers and husbands are going to all kill each other, and they run into the middle of the battle with their children, saying, please just stop fighting, for our sake and for the sake of our children, you need to stop fighting or else you're all going to die. And then the author says, Swa werthliche on swa mildeliche was Romaburg on Frumanja Halrod, mit Broder Blode on mit Swera, on mit Romuluses ame numatoris, thonne he akofsloch, tha he kuningwas, on himself si than totham riche fang. Okay, so this is sarcasm here. Orosius, who is attempting to say, like, look at how horrible the world was before Christianity, so as to say, Christianity isn't the reason why the world is horrible today. This is actually an addendum by the Old English translator. If we look to the right page, this is not in the Latin. So the translator really had bought into the message that Orosius was trying to say here, because he adds in his own sarcastic remark here. Swa werliche on swa mildeliche was Romaburg on Frumanja Halgod. This is how worthily and swa peacefully and swa mildeliche and so peacefully was Rome in the beginning. Halgod is like blessed, like kind of sanctified. What's the word I'm looking for? Consummated almost. Like this is the beginning of Rome, and he calls it swa werliche on swa mildeliche. So literally so wonderful and so peaceful. That is to say, like, it was not wonderful, it was not peaceful at all. It had Broder Blode, mit Broder Blode, that is with the blood of brothers, und mit Swera, that is fathers-in-law, und mit Romulus ame numatoris, and the blood, that is, of Romulus's grandfather, Numitor, Thonahe Akofsloch, who he also killed, Thahe Kiningwas, when he was king, and himself si Thantotham Riche Fang, and he himself took the kingdom. So here we get a reference to another story where Numitor, the grandfather of Romulus and Remus, is the king, and Romulus comes and kills him so that Romulus can become the king. Thus jebletso de Romulus Romana Riche on Fruman, mit his brother blodeth on a wall, ond mid thara sweora blode tha chirchan, ond mid his amas blode that riche. So this is how Romulus blessed the Roman kingdom in the beginning. Thu si bletsode Romulus, Romana riche on fruman. Mid his brother blodeth on a wall. He blessed the wall with his brother's blood. That is the common anecdote that the walls of Rome are red because they're red with the blood of Remus. So Romulus je bletsode Romana riche mid his brother blodeth on a wall, ond mid thara sweora blode tha chirichan. So the blood of the fathers-in-law, that is the fathers of the Sabine women, the temple, the chirichan, literally the church, ond mid his amas blode tha riche, and with the blood of his grandfather, the kingdom itself. On sithan his agen sweor to dade beswak, tha he hine to him aspon, ond him je heit that he his riche with hine dalan wolde, ond hine undertham of sloch. Okay. On sithan his agen sweor to dade beswak. So after that, his own father-in-law, that is the father of his wife, he tricked him, and he tricked him to death, essentially. To dade beswak. Tha he hine to him aspon. He allied himself to him. On him ye hate that he his riche with hine dalan wolde. And he said, hey, let's be allies. Let's dalan, let's split our kingdoms. On hine undertham of sloch. And, under the pretense of that, he killed him. He tha Romulus after his son underfeng Kirinensa jewin thara burwarna, for thon the he tha yit lyte londriche havde, buton therre buri anre, for thon the Romulus and alle Romare otherum folkum unjuerde waren, for thon the he on knicht hade waren other ramonna needlingas. Okay, so Romulus, he tha after his son, so after this, underfeng Kirinensa Yuin. So he began a war against Kirinensa, Latin Caeninensium, Tharaburguarna, of those citizens. For Thonte, because he thayit he that us like thus far, luto londriche havde, buton tharre buri anre. So he only had a little bit of land besides the city, that is Rome. For thonte Romulus, and alle Romare otherum folkum unwerde waren. Romulus and all of the Romans were kind of unworthy, is the word, unwerde, to other people, otherum folkum. For thonte he on knicht hade waren other ramonna needlingas, because in their childhood they were the slaves of other men, other ramonna needlingas. Tha he tha havdon kirinen sa tha burg Satan. Tha he tha havdon kirinen tha burg Satan, on thar Michelne hungur tholiende waren, tha je kwaron he that him leuvere ware, that he on tham irmthum heura lief je enderon, thonne he that je win for laten, oth the frith je nomen. Okay, so when they had Satan, when they had surrounded the city, Thaburg, on thar Michelne hungur tholiende waren, and the people within were suffering tholiende, Michelne hungur, great hunger. Tha je kwaron he that him leuvre ware, that he on tham irmthum heura lief je enderon. Then they said that they would prefer him leuvre ware, that he on tham irmthum heura lief je enderon, that they would end their lives on that suffering. Thonne he that je win for laten. Then they would for laten abandon kind of the war, that is to surrender. Oth frith je nomen, or make peace. He thar tha winnende waren oth he tha burg a brakon, and after tham we tha landleude on alte halve unablinendliche winnende waren, oth he thar in buton havdon monica buri beitena. So then they were fighting. He thar tha winnende waren, they were fighting there. Oth he tha burg a brakon, until they broke into the city. That is kind of, it literally, until they broke the city, but it really means to conquer a city. And after tham, we tha landleude on alte have una blinendliche winnende waren. They were kind of they were unceasingly fighting. Oth he tha rimbuton havdon monica buri beitna, until they had kind of many of they'd captured much of the city. Ac tha kuningas, they after Romulus Rixodon, waren for kudran, and argran thon ne heware, and tham folkum lathran, and unitasran, oth that Tarquinus, they we in Besaidon, they hire alra fracothast was, either ye argast, ye ranast, ye overmodgast, alra thar Romana weef, thathe he michte, he to ye lire ye nidde, and he suna ye thavode, that he lai mid Latinus weef, Lucretia hate, Brutus is swelstor, tha heo on firde waren, thach the he Romana bremus de waren to tham kuninge. Okay, that was a pretty long sentence. It begins, ac tha kuningas, the after Romulus and Rixodon waren for kudron on argran thon he ware. But the kings that ruled Rixodon after Romulus waren for kudron. They were for kudron is like, in modern English we might say like uncouth-er, and argran, and kind of lower in morals is probably how I would want to translate this. Thon heware than he was. On tham folkum lathran and unitasran, and they were kind of more hated by the people and less unitasran, less profitable to them, less commodious to them. Olthat Tarquinius, so until Tarquin, they were in Besaidon, they hire alra fracothas was. He was the worst of all. Either ye argost, ye ranost, ye overmodgast. He was the poorest is what arg means, but not the poorest. The kind of the most wicked, I guess I should say. Ranost, the greediest, ye overmodgast, and the most vain, the most prideful. Alra thar Romana weef, thathe he michte, he toye lire ye nide. Every Roman woman that he could, he toye lire ye nide. He compelled to lay with him, essentially. And he suna ye thavode, and he permitted his son, that he lay mid Latinus vive, Lucretia hate, Brutus is sueostor, tha he on firde waren. Okay, so he permitted that he would lay with Latinus vive, that with the wife of Latinus. Lucretia hate, she was named Lucretia. Brutus is sueostor, she was the sister of Brutus. And then this says, tha heu on firde waren. That's probably tha he on firde waren when they were in the army. Thach they he Romana bremus de waren to tham kuninge. However, that is, even though they were the most important, most notable, here probably most like virtuous, waren to tham kuninge. Breme is the same word that we have in Beowulf, Beo was breme, kind of like famous or important. Heotha Lucretia he selve for tham aqualde. Then she, Lucretia, killed herself for that. Tha that Latinus hire wer je achsode, and Brutus hire brodor, tha forleton he tha firde the he bewiton sholdon, and tha he ham komon, tha adravdon he either ye thon a kuning, ye his sunu, and we'll stop there for a second. So, tha that Latinus hire wer je achsode. So when here, achsode generally means to ask about, but it can also mean to find out about. And here it means when Latinus found out about that, her husband, and Brutus, her brother, and Brutus hire brodor, tha forleton he tha firde, then they left the army, the he bewiton sholdon, that they were kind of in charge of, and tha he ham komon, and when they came home, tha adravdon he either ye thon a kuning, ye his sunu, ye alle tha the thar kinikinnes waren of the riche mid alle. So they drove out, adravdon is to exile, they drove out the king, his son, and everyone who kinikinnes waren, that is, was kin of the king, of the riche mid alle, out of the kingdom, so they exiled them. Him tha Romane After tham lad tewas jeseton, the he consulas heton, that heurarice helde anjar an mon. Okay, so after that, tha Romane, the Romans, jeseton lad tewas, they kind of made for themselves rulers. Lad teo is more kind of like just a leader. They he consulas heton, that they named consuls. That heurarice helde anjar an mon, that would hold the kingdom for 1 year, one man. One person, but here, one man. Okay, that's the passage. I hope you guys found this interesting. We're definitely going to be reading more Orosius. I'm thinking the next thing I'll read is the story of Alexander the Great, probably split into 3 parts because it's quite long. But yeah, I hope you guys like this, and until next time, Farathie Isunde.